The USS Indianapolis is one of the most interesting military sinkings because of the aftermath that took place. We've all seen the movie Jaws and heard the sobering tale of Captain Quint. The question is, how accurate is the movie to the actual events? The USS Indianapolis was a Portland-class heavy cruiser named after Indianapolis, Indiana, which first launched in 1931. At the beginning of World War II, the Indianapolis was used in Task Force 12, which was tasked with locating enemy forces, specifically the Japanese aircraft carriers responsible for the attack on Pearl Harbor. They were unable to locate the aircraft carriers and returned to Pearl Harbor on December 13th. The Indianapolis spent its time from 1941 to 1945 in the Pacific theater of the war, participating in the New Guinea Campaign, the Aleutian Islands Campaign, Palau Islands Campaign, and the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The Indianapolis was later sent to Tokyo to take part in the cover ploy of the island of Iwo Jima. Immediately after the attack, ships, including the Indianapolis, raced towards Iwo Jima to help with the landing. After that, it was assigned to Task Force 54 to help cover the invasion of Okinawa. On March 31st, the day before the combined U.S. Army and U.S. Marine Corps units started its assault landings, the Indianapolis took fire from a Japanese plane, which dived towards the bridge of the ship. The Japanese pilot managed to release his bomb before crashing his plane into the sea near the port stern. The bomb plummeted through the deck into the crew's mess hall and through the fuel tanks, before crashing through the keel and exploding in the water underneath. The concussion blew 2 gaping holes into the keel, which flooded nearby compartments, killing 9 crewmen. The ship's bulkheads prevented any progressive flooding. The ship then steamed to a salvage ship for emergency repairs. During the inspection, it was revealed that her propeller shafts had been damaged, her fuel tanks had been ruptured, and her water distilling equipment ruined. Indianapolis then steamed under its own power to Mare Island Naval Shipyard in San Francisco for repairs. After weeks of repair in San Francisco, the Indianapolis was chosen for a special secret mission. In the hold of its ship, non-nuclear parts of the atomic bomb Little Boy was loaded, while a lead-lined canister full of uranium was welded to the floor of Captain McVeigh's quarters. The shipment was also accompanied by 2 Army artillery officers. The officers were really radiologist James Nolan and engineer Robert Furman, 2 men who worked on the top-secret Manhattan Project. The Indianapolis departed San Francisco on July 16, 1945, and raced across the Pacific heading for Pearl Harbor to refuel. The ship set a speed record for the trip from California to Pearl Harbor, which remains unbroken to this day. After refueling in Hawaii on July 19th, they headed for Tinian. They arrived on July 26th. To the crew's surprise, the components were unloaded under heavy supervision of admirals and high-ranking military officers. The Indianapolis was told to head to Guam, where it would receive its next orders. When they arrived in Guam, they were ordered to join with other surface forces in the area of Leyte Gulf, Philippines, for further training before the invasion of Japan. Before leaving, McVeigh asked the island's commander if there were any other ships traveling to Leyte at the time, to which he was told no. The Indianapolis was used to traveling alone without any escort. Having done so many times, they proceeded on leaving on July 28th. The ship began by zigzagging throughout the Philippine Sea, a maneuver designed to avoid torpedoes since Guam. Captain McVeigh had been assured before his departure that there was no submarine activity in the area, and he decided to cease zigzagging on the night of July 29th due to poor visibility. After stopping the maneuvering, a Japanese submarine, an I-58, was patrolling nearby and spotted the cruiser just before midnight. The submarine launched 6 torpedoes at the ship. Within a few minutes, just after midnight on July 30th, 2 of those torpedoes slammed into the Indianapolis. The first torpedo blew off the bow of the ship, while the second struck nearby amidship near the powder magazine. Aboard the ship, a chaotic situation ensued. Water poured in through the gaping holes in the starboard side, and the Indianapolis began to list. Men were thrown from their bunks, tossed across the rooms, and jolted 15 feet in the air by the force. Captain McVeigh was instantly awakened by the explosions. The crew manned their general quarter stations, but it quickly became clear that there was nothing they could do. With the ship's communications out, McVeigh ordered an abandoned ship order passed by mouth. Some men had already jumped into the water, but hundreds more followed suit, most grabbing one of the many life jackets on deck before plunging into the oil-coated water. The cruiser rolled on its side, and many crew, including the captain, climbed over the rail and walked down the side of the ship before stepping into the water. The USS Indianapolis sank in less than 12 minutes, taking over 300 crew with her. As she disappeared beneath the waves, 900 of the ship's crew floated in the Pacific Ocean, their location and fate unknown to the U.S. Navy. The men would float in shark-infested waters for days before being found. Of the 900 men that went into the water, more than 100 men died on the first night in the water from injuries suffered during the torpedo attack. After a day in the water, more survivors succumbed, mostly to exposure and saltwater-induced illnesses. Most of the shark attacks occurred on already dead sailors who were eaten after succumbing to other illnesses. The sharks that would pick off the floating bodies were likely oceanic white-tip sharks, though some experts believe that some tiger sharks may have been involved as well. The crewmen began to form up into large groups to try and help stabilize each other in the water, as well as keep sharks from picking them off. The sharks usually stayed away from larger groups because they would get beaten and kicked, normally forcing them away. By day 2, severe dehydration had set in, and hallucinations and extreme thirst drove the men to drink ocean water, which exacerbated their condition and killed many. By the 3rd day, hallucinating started to become a very common occurrence, and men thought they were seeing land or ship would swim off from the group and would likely drown or be taken by a shark. The crew was strung out into groups of varying sizes across miles of the ocean, and these groups floated further away as the wind and waves drove them apart for the next few days. After 4 days and 5 nights, the survivors were finally sighted by a U.S. Navy aircraft PV-1 on a routine patrol. On August 2nd, Navy pilot Chuck Gwynn moved to the back of his aircraft to fix an antenna when he looked down at the ocean below and spotted a large oil slick. He thought it was a Japanese submarine, and he took back over the controls of the plane to circle around and drop bombs on it. Then he noticed the objects in the water and realized they were people. Noticing people in the water, he dropped life jackets and canisters of water of what he had to survivors. The canisters unfortunately ruptured on impact. He radioed the report of many men in the water, which led to aircraft and warships racing towards the coordinates Gwynn sent out. Rather than immediately sending a rescue crew, the Navy ordered a single airplane to do a recon. A PBY-5A Catalina seaplane, piloted by LT Adrian Marks, took off with supplies to be dropped into the water. Upon his arrival, he found many men in the water, and he saw sharks savagely attacking and devouring sailors. Although he had orders to only look and report, he told his crew he was landing to assist the struggling sailors. Marks put his plane down, slamming the pontoons into a wave, which rendered the plane unable to take off again, but still afloat. Marks began taxiing over the rolling waves and snatching up as many survivors as he could. The Indianapolis had sunk so quickly that many of the men who had been asleep had no time to dress, and the men were naked or half-dressed and covered in oil when the rescuers fished them out of the water. When they ran out of room inside the plane, men were strapped to the plane's wings using parachutes. They finally brought 56 men aboard the PBY before a rescue ship arrived several hours later. The USS Cecil Doyle arrived and began taking survivors from the PBY. Disregarding the safety of his own ship and crew, he aimed his largest searchlight into the sky as a beacon for 6 other ships that were coming to assist. It took almost 2 days to find all the survivors, and of the 1,197 crewmen, only 320 men were found alive, and 4 of these died later after the rescue. The USS Indianapolis remains one of the most controversial sinkings in U.S. Navy history. Blame being pointed all around, but unfortunately for the Indianapolis's crew, no one ever received their distress signal, nor was anyone expecting them in Leyte until July 31st. After the war, Captain McVeigh was court-martialed for the loss of his ship. The trial invited national scandal by bringing Commander Hashimoto to the United States to testify against McVeigh. Although Hashimoto and others insisted that it would not have made any difference, McVeigh was convicted of hazarding his ship by failing to zigzag. Hate mail from the families lost of the seamen and trial took toll on McVeigh until he took his own life in November of 1968. The surviving crew fought for years to get their captain exonerated. They finally succeeded in clearing Captain McVeigh's name and expunging the court-martial from his record in 2001. The wreck site of the USS Indianapolis eluded underwater archaeologists for decades. It was finally discovered by the crew of research vessel Petrel in August of 2017, more than 72 years after the ship sank beneath the waves and disappeared. Her discovery gave closure to some families of the lost seamen, although a few were concerned what the Navy would do with the remains of the ship and her crewmen. The wreck is now considered a grave site, the final resting place of around 300 men who never made it off the ship. Many of the seamen who went into the water drowned or died of dehydration. While there were many shark attacks, the exact figure of death by shark attack among the survivors is unknown. There were many survivors who never even saw a shark. Thanks for watching, everybody.